Right. So see, this is what we discussed yesterday. We talked about Java, we talked about the JVM, we talked about your machine that has got three critical components: the random access memory, and you've got the hard disk, and then you've got the processor. It is the hard disk on which you install your applications, and then when you execute your applications, the set of instructions are executed by the processor. But so to say, actually, the processor has got cores, and it is the core that executes the set of instructions, and what is scheduled to execute on the core is not the process but the threads. Each and every program that you have on your machine are actually multi-threaded. Even if it does not have multiple threads, it will certainly have at least one thread, and that thread gets executed on any one of those available cores at that given point in time. And then you have many applications running on your machine. So one of the applications like that is running on your machine is like Java, for example. And Java is it's a JVM. Java is a program, but it's a JVM. It's a virtual machine. Why do we call it a virtual machine? It's a plain program, but why do we call it a virtual machine? Why? Because it has the capability of interpreting your bytecode, compiling it into machine code, and then that machine code is executed on your machine. So it does a lot of memory management for you. The threads that are created, each and every thread executes in its own stack. I repeat, each and every thread gets executed in its own stack. And then you have, the random access memory. The Java heap where the objects are created. You may have some reference variables pointing to the objects in heap. You may have some reference variables within the object that may point to other objects in the heap. And then you've got the meta space. We are going to come to meta space in a moment, a few minutes from now. And then so there are multiple threads. There can be n number of threads running in your application at any given point in time. So that's how your application runs. We also talked about the comparison of the objects. This is very important and interesting point. How do you compare objects? If you want to really compare the value of the objects, then in that case you've got to use dot equals. And if you have to use and if you want to just simply, if you use equal to with the object references, it will compare the references, it will compare the memory addresses, which will certainly never ever be same unless you have two references pointing to the same object. Then yes, then equal to will return to you true. But then you don't do that, right? You would want to compare the values more often than not. Then in that case you must use dot equals function. And then we talked about integer as well, that behind the scenes autoboxing, how autoboxing works, it ends up using integer dot value of. So for you, from the source code perspective, it's auto boxing. But then what happens is, exactly in the bytecode I did show you that it combines that into integer dot value of, and then similarly other data types as well, like long, double, and so on. I hope I'm audible to you all. Clear? I'm audible to you all, right? Now see, this Google Meet is actually not for trainings. This is for meetings. This is for meetings. So it's not replete with training kind of features that we need, because I cannot see the messages that you type while I am on my screen. So I have to use shift tab, and then only then, because there is no way to pop out the chat window. So if you are putting some message across, I just don't know. So just you've got to bear with me. I'm audible to you all, right? Am I audible? Clear? Okay, good. Thank you. Right. Okay, fine. So okay, can any one of you raise your hand? Anindya, can you raise your hand? There is an option to raise hand, and let me see whether I can at least. Oh, okay. So there is just a beep that I get. I don't get to see anything on the user interface, like someone has raised hand. So, but I do get a beep, so I know that you have raised your hand. Okay, fine. So if you are typing a message, and if I'm unable to see, of course I won't be able to see while I'm sharing the screen, because I'm on my screen. I'm not on this app. I use shift tab, and so in that case you can raise your hand so that I know there is a beep, and then I can go back and check the messages. Anyways, so I will request them to allow me to use Zoom. I have a paid account of Zoom, and we can use it for the entire day, but I don't know whether they will allow or not. They've got their policy to use some specific set of applications. Let me check with them. But as of now, let's continue. Okay, so this is what we discussed. And then we also talked about processes and threads, right? That was quite related to what we have already, talked about. Then we, towards the end of the day, we started writing code, and we have written a class called customer. That is, then we made that class as an abstract class. We made that class as an abstract class, and then we wrote two different classes, export and local customer, that inherits from the customer class. And then print details was the generic behavior. That means there is no difference between export customer and the local customer in the way the details are printed. So print details will always, I mean it's not that always, I'm sorry, but then it's a generic behavior that I want to implement. So I will not write print details again here, and I won't write print details again over here. I will write print details as a generic behavior. This is called generalization. Create invoice, it is specialized behavior. The way the invoice is created for export customer is not as same as the way it is created for local customer. There is difference in the business logic. So instead of writing if else and if here, that if the customer is export customer, then do this, or else if it is a local customer, then do this, then in that case that's really bad. So you don't do that. All right, so what you do is that you just simply declare a function over here. You just declare it, and then you implement the specialized behavior of create invoice for export customer here, and so is the case with local customer here. So this is called generalization and specialization. So this is what we are going to continue with. But then before I move on with inheritance and abstraction and stuff, I would like to go back here, and you remember this is the box that we had created. Meta space, I said permanent generation. Now I have a question to you all. Now you can answer this question, my dear friends. Please see. The question is, do you think it is possible for Java to create an object of a class for you runtime without knowing the definition of the class? Do you think it is possible? How on earth will Java create an object of a class without knowing the class? Is it possible? Will it create an object of a class without knowing the class? Without having the definition of the class? The object of a class? No, my question is different. See, you are expecting your JVM. So when you say customer C is equal to new customer, take a look at this statement here. Right? So when you say customer C is new customer, never name your variables like A, B, C, D. Never do that. We are just talking about things, and hence I'm doing it. But otherwise, you must name your variables quite meaningfully. So customer C is equal to new customer. Do you think it is possible that it creates an object of customer class in memory without having the knowledge of customer class? I mean, without knowing what are the properties of the customer class, what are the properties, what are the functions declared in the customer class, without having the structure of that class, without loading the class. Do you think it will be able to create the object of customer class? How will it know what must be the properties of the customer object? How will it know what will be the behavior of the customer object? Do you think it can create an object without loading the customer class in the very first place? Yes or no? Correct. Your answer is right. No, it cannot. It cannot create an object of the class without loading the class first. So what is it supposed to do? So the very first time, now you've got to catch my words. You've got to, each and every word in my statement is extremely important. So please pay very careful attention. What I'm saying is, the very first active use of the class, I repeat, the very first active use of the class, and I'm going to revisit this statement again in some time. What will your JVM do? It will open the customer.class file, which is there on your hard disk. It is actually there in the class path. What is a class path? Class path is the class path. It's just a variable. Class path is the path in which it will look for the classes that you are trying to use in your application. So it will look for customer.class file. It will open the .class file internally. It is supposed to do all of that all on its own. I am explaining to you what happens under the hood. So what will it do? It will first open the customer.class file, and it will get the bytecode, and it will load that bytecode here in the meta space. I repeat, it will load that bytecode. Essentially, it loads the class over here in the meta space. सोच के देखो, just think of it. Will it be possible for your JVM to create, if suppose you are one of those engineers at Oracle or maybe at whatever company, maybe at Azure Systems, if you are, I'm sorry about that. If you are one of those engineers who is building your own JVM, then in that case, do you think you will be able to create your code, your Java will be able to create an object of the class without having the definition of the class? No. So how does it get the definition of the class? It loads the class here. It loads the class here. Where does it load the class? Here in this permanent generation. Hence the name permanent generation. Once it loads the class, it will always keep the class there. And then what it does while loading the class, it actually creates, now you've got to be very, very careful while listening to me, and you must give me undivided attention, right? It creates an object of class. I repeat, it creates an object of class. It creates an object of class. What is this object of? This object that is created in the permanent generation is the object of class. I want you all to repeat this for me. All 23 of you all must write. It creates when the class is loaded, your JVM creates an object of class. Write it down. I'm sorry for this. I'm sorry I'm making you all, work like 10 standard students, but no, trust me, it helps and it's fun. Write it down for me, please. When you write it down, it gets engraved in your mind, and then you don't need to write it down anywhere else. Once you write it somewhere, in one of some places, it helps. When the class is loaded, it creates an object of class. Brilliant. In the meta space, very good, Rakesh. Object of class, very good with it. That helps. When the class is loaded in the permanent generation, it creates an object of class. Brilliant, Anikendu. Very nice. I'm very happy. Trust me. Jitna aap log, participate karoge. I mean, more the participation coming from yourself, more will I get pepped up. I'll be really very happy, and I will share loads of things. When class is created by the JVM, loads class in meta space. Okay, Manisha, that's good. What about others? When the JVM is loaded, no. So Kaushal, I will put it like this: when the class, the very first active use of the class, the JVM will load the class, and while loading the class, it creates an object of class in meta space. Very good, Kaushal. That meta space is extremely important. When the class is loaded, yeah, this is also good, Ananya. When class is loaded, the JVM creates an object of class. This is also a good statement. See, I made one statement, my dear friends, but each one of you all are putting it in your own words. How brilliant this is, see? Super. And others also must read the definitions given by others. I mean, each one of you all must read the definition given by others. When class is loaded, it creates an object of class. Correct, Navya? That's superb. When the class is loaded in JVM, it creates an object of class. Superb. I would have appreciated all the more if you had written object of class and the object of class C in uppercase. You're getting it? See, now I'm writing it. It creates an object of, see the way I'm writing. Not that you did not get it, I understand, but just trying to be, object of class, because that, see my statement now. Object of class. That class is actually a class. There is a class called class in Java. Okay, see this. You see this? There is an object of class. A java.lang.class. Here you go. Please see. See this? This is that class. Right from its inception, you cannot imagine Java without the class. And it is a final class. You cannot inherit this class. You cannot create a class of your own and inherit it from class. You cannot do that because this is the final class. So there is a class called class in Java. And if it's a class, you can create an object of it, but you don't need to create an object of it. The JVM creates an object of it, though you can also create using an API, using one of the functions in the library, but then otherwise, it does that automatically. Now, what is the name of the component that loads the class? I said the very first active use of the class. The moment JVM sees the first active use of the class, here in this case customer, it will open the .class file, it will read the bytecode and create an object of class, and what will it do? It will store the bytecode information of the class that it has read into this object of class plain English. I will repeat it once again. What it does is it creates an object of class, and what do you mean by loading the class? It creates an object of class and stores the bytecode of the class that it has loaded into this object of class. Now I will ask two questions to you all. Rapid fire, you must answer this question. Which class is being loaded based on the discussion that we are doing? Which class is being loaded? Which class is being loaded? Take a look while I'm discussing. Superb. Very good. All of you, tap, rapid fire. Which class is being loaded? Customer class is being loaded. Superb. So whenever you, here also while answering, I will appreciate if you, the moment you type the name of the class, make sure that the name of the class starts with an uppercase. Naming convention. Make sure that the name of the class starts with uppercase. Customer, yes, so customer class is being loaded. So where will the bytecode of the customer class stored? Now my second question is, where will the bytecode of customer class will be stored? Brilliant. Very nice. Yes, your answers are correct. Meta space is correct. Object of class is correct. And no, Likita, it will store the bytecode of the customer class into the object of class in the meta space. Super, right, Chandana, you're right that it will be stored in the meta space, but in the object of class. Yes, Bhartiya, exactly. It is the meta space, and in the meta space, where will it scatter it, or it will store it in the object of class? Yes, so that you're right, it will store it in the object of class. So this is where the bytecode of the customer class will be stored. Now you see, I did make that statement. I said the first active use. So it's quite possible that from some other threads also, and somewhere in your entire application, you might have created another object of class again. Quite possible, right? You can create n number of objects of a given class. So when you have maybe somewhere over here written again new customer is equal to new customer, or say customer 1 is equal to new. In short, you are creating an object of class customer here, somewhere over here in this thread. Once again, it will see that the customer class object is getting created. It needs to create an object of class customer in heap, but it will check whether the class has been already loaded. If yes, it will reuse that same bytecode. If no, it will then do the process of loading the class. Why? It does not make sense to keep on loading the same class again and again in metaspace. Unnecessary overhead, because loading of class is good amount of task for it. It's a compute intensive task. It requires CPU resources. Opening of a file itself is, it's compute intensive. It needs to open a file handle, it needs to read the file, and then it needs to, introspect on the class. Note my words, introspect. Once again, it does introspection of the class. One more time, it's a technical term. Introspecting the class. What do you mean by introspecting the class? Finding which are the properties of the class, what are the methods of the class, what are the modifiers of those methods, whether it is public, protected, or private, whether there is a class within the class, are there nested classes. It does all of that work while loading the class, and then eventually it creates an object of class and stores the bytecode there. Good amount of work. It is a compute intensive task. So do you think it will make sense for it? In fact, It stores the bytecode here in the meta space in the object of class of the class that is loaded, only so that it does not have to reload the class again and again. Isn't it, friends? Come on. Why do you store things somewhere? So that you can reuse it, right? So that you don't have to do it again and again, and you can reuse it. So that's exactly why it is creating an object of class. This is exactly why it is storing the bytecode there. This is exactly why it does this. It goes through this concept of class loading, so that it does not have to load the class again and again. And that is the reason, you remember, please recollect, I said I will revisit the statement. It loads the class only on the first active use of the class. It will not keep on reloading the class again and again, unless it's a different class loader. Now I don't want to go that deep, right, friends? I don't want to get into that. Otherwise, on class loader itself I can talk for next 3 hours on class loader, but that's not within the scope as of now. But whatever things we have talked about till now, that is very basic, fundamental and critical. Nothing advanced in this. There is nothing like advanced stuff here. It's a very basic stuff. A Java programmer must know about this, right? If you come to me as a Java programmer saying that I have some 3 months of experience, or even for that matter 1 year of experience, and if you do not know about the class loader component, I'm not happy, right? Okay, and now it's my duty to also show you which component does the entire job of loading the class. There is a component called class loader. Okay, you will find me using this term component and component. What I'm only trying to say with respect to Java, core Java, what I'm only trying to refer to as a class. Okay, so when I say components, they're all interchangeable words. So see, class loader, there is something called java.lang.class loader. Can you see this? Java.lang.class loader. Yes, friends, isn't it? See, it's java.lang.class loader. Take a look at the package, java.lang.class loader. And what is the best place to learn Java? Come on, what is the best place to learn Java? I want answers here. Best source to learn Java. No, source, I'm saying source. Hands-on is a good way, Anindya, you're right. But then what is the best source? Kahan se seekhunga main? From where am I going to learn Java? Best place. That's nice, Java Point. Yeah, they help. Java Point helps. Geek4Greeks.java, that also helps, yes. Yes, see Rakesh. See the answer coming from Rakesh. Yes, Gaurav, Oracle also has got very good tutorial. I agree, Gaurav. Yes, Lakshmika. Yes, Chandana, you're right. Library files. And you see the answer from Rakesh. He says the source code of Java itself. The source code of Java itself. When you get into the source code of Java, you get to see how they have written their code. You get to see how they have written, and you get a lot to learn. And how things really work internally. What are the algorithms that they have used? What kind of data structures that they have used? And I do not know the PwC process, onboarding process, or rather interviewing process. But then otherwise, I know companies, they've got 13 rounds of interviews, and and the focus, not of course in all the rounds, but one of the most critical rounds, data structures and algorithms. If you're good with that, they take you in, right? Okay, so please see this. You have class loader class. It's the best place. Java source code is the best place to learn Java. And then you see this. I'll take you to the functions. There are so many functions over here. One of the functions is what, my dear friends? Please take a look. One of the functions is what? Come on, tell me, what is the name of this function? What do you see? What do you see? What is the name of the function? What is the name of the function? Load class. Yes, load class is the name of the function. This is the fully qualified name of the class, and whether to resolve it or not, the bytecode must be resolved or not resolved, and that is determined by this variable, by this parameter. And then you see this in a synchronized way. It loads the class. You can see this, friends. It loads the class. Correct. And please take a look. Take a look at this statement. These two lines of code. Take a look. 571 and 572. What does this tell you? I have explained this to you. Actually, I have explained this to you. And what does this tell you? Come on, guys. What does this tell you? Yeah, get the name of the class and see, I have highlighted two statements there, my dear friends. Two statements. Tell me what it does. What does this mean? What these two statements tell you? Tell me. Yes. Yes, Anikendu. Very good. Very good. Very good, Anindya. Yes, Abhijit. Yes. Very good, Likita. Very nice. Very good, Pooja. Right, you're right too. To check whether the class is already loaded. Yes. Yes. So now you see for yourself, it's all there, you know. I'm not just talking about theoretical things, I'm showing it to you right here, isn't it? So see here, it will load the class loader component will load the class only and only when if the class is not loaded. Hence I say the first active use of the class will load the class, or else it will keep on reusing the bytecode that is already there. Correct? Now see this, friends. I will close this. Now see the fun. You know very well that I have a class called customer. You can see that? You know this very well, right? Now, very quickly, I will create a class. I'll say introspection demo. Why am I doing this? Introspection demo. Why am I doing this? I am doing this and I'm showing this demo to you so that, and I will make you all write this code actually. You know, I will make you all write this code. It will help. I am showing this and I'm explaining this to you. When I expect you to write the code, I will not show you the source code. I repeat, I will not show you the source code. You must be able to write these few lines of code all on your own. Correct? And when you struggle doing it, I am writing it perhaps in 2 minutes. Okay, while explaining, if I do it, it may take some time. But then, you know, if I were to write it in 2 minutes, you take 10 minutes to write, no problem. But while struggling for those 10 minutes, you will end up learning a lot. You getting the point? You know, never ever think that, you know, each and every moment, my dear friends, each and every moment you spend in front of your machine, each and every second that you spend in front of your machine with your hands on the keyboard, it's never a waste. It's never ever a waste. Even if you were trying to solve something and if you end up spending 3-4 hours, it's never a waste. Please don't think that 3-4 hours were wasted. Absolutely not. If I ask you to, you know, come down to my office, if you happen to visit Baroda, you know, I give you the entire address, you know. So once you come down to the airport and then you land, and then the airport, you come out of the airport, then take this right turn, left turn, and this is the address, blah blah blah, and then you reach. Now suppose, you know, I did not give you the right address or whatever, for some reason you get totally lost and you end up spending, otherwise from airport to this place it's 40 minutes, but you end up spending 2 hours, you know, trying to search for this place. Now you say, oh, my time was wasted. No, it was not wasted. Why? Because while searching for this place, you ended up looking at so many other places. You ended up looking at, you know, there is a Brahma Kumari temple out here, you know, just next to, you know, some few buildings away from here. So maybe, you know, you say, oh, there's a Brahma Kumari temple. So tomorrow if you want to go to that Brahma Kumari temple, you know, oh yes, while searching for Shakir's office, I had come across that, and now today I want to go there. I know how to reach to that place. See? So while you are searching for a solution of something, you know, you think that your time is wasted. No, your time is not getting wasted, because you come across so many other things which you don't need now, but later on if you need, you will recollect, oh, while searching for the solution of so and so thing, I had come across that particular thing, and that's what I need today. And then again you do some research work, some hard work for a few minutes, and you get the solution. So never a waste. Okay, so coming back here, what am I going to do? You see this, I'm going to put the name of the class, string, class name. You see this? Fully qualified name of the class, com dot, that's the package name, pwc dot, yeah, it's training dot, and I'll say Java dot customer is the name of the class, fully qualified name of the class. It's in the string format, and it could have been anything, it could have been, I would have given the name of any class, correct? So dynamically I am going to load this class. See what I'm doing? I'll say class C, okay, is equal to, I'll say class dot for name, and I'll say class name. Got it? And if I do this, I will have to surround this in a try catch block or throws an exception. We will talk in more detail about exception handling later, but class not found exception is what I need to throw. You see this now, because it's quite possible that this class does not exist. Maybe I have misspelled it, or maybe that class does not exist at all. Okay, so this class gets loaded. Now see, what is it that I'm getting on the left hand side, friends? What is it that I am getting on the left hand side? So this is the process. Class.forName is the process. When I say customer, C is equal to, I'll say new customer. It won't be possible to create a new customer now. Why? Because I have made it abstract. Okay, I have made it abstract. Suppose it is not abstract. Okay, I don't want to do that. Okay, I'll say export customer. Right, now see this. Customer C is equal to export customer. Correct, this is what I'm doing. So you know what, now implicitly, note my words, implicitly customer class will be loaded and export customer class will be loaded implicitly, because at the time of compilation it knows that this is the class that you are referring to. But at the time of compilation, see these two lines of code, at the time of compilation it does not know about the class. Why? Because this is a string value. It can be any string value, right? It can be anything. It can be anything, and you are dynamically loading the class runtime explicitly. Here implicitly the classes will be loaded by your JVM. Here you are explicitly loading the class. So let me comment this out and see class C is equal to class.forName. And of course, needless to say, we have talked about this since last 5 minutes, 10 minutes. In fact, we are talking about this, that loading of the class means what? It creates an object of class in the meta space. So this for name of class.forName, whatever the class is, it will load the class, create an object of class in the permanent generation. Okay, you can call it meta space, and it will return to you the reference of this object. It will return to you the reference of this object of class that will hold the bytecode information of the class that it has loaded over here in this reference. So the C is the reference to that object of class. Got that? And if this is the reference to the object of class, and if the point that I'm making is true, that object of class contains the bytecode of the class that it has loaded, then needless to say, I must be able to get all the declared fields in that class. Come on. Yes or no? I must be able to get declared fields, and if I want, I must be able to get all the declared methods in the class. See this? I must be able to get all the declared methods. Okay, if I get all the declared methods, then I'll say what is it that it is going to return back to me? The array of methods. See this? The array of methods. Java.lang.reflect. And then if I get the array of methods, don't you think I can very well loop through all of those methods? This is called reflection. This is called introspection. And I say method M in methods. This is the way you run a loop on an array. So if there were 10 methods, I will get an array of all the 10 methods in the customer class if there were 10 methods. But how many methods do I have? Print details and create invoice, 2 methods is what I have. Correct. And then I write system.out.println m.getName. I can do loads of things here, my dear friends. I can dynamically do anything that I like, but I'm just printing the name for now. And let me run this. Okay, what it says is internal error, and it is unable to load the class for name introspection.name.java, internal lines breakpoint pwc.customer and methods. Why? com.pwc.training.java.customer, and suppose I make it export customer, but that shouldn't be a problem. I must be able to load any class, even if it is abstract. I am not creating methods of that class. I am not instantiating that class at all. No worries, because maybe I'm using another JDK. Okay, let me use Java 1.8 as the JDK. I'll go to preferences. Okay, and I will go to rather file and the project structure. Okay, project. I will use Java 1.8. Apply modules. I will use Java 1.8 8, and the dependencies 8 is just perfect. That's the modular is equal to apply. Okay. String class name com.period. That's correct, right? Customer class com. Acha, it's assignment 1. I'm so sorry. It's assignment 1. I'm so sorry. The name of the class is wrong. And then I say customer. Yeah, here you go. You can see this print details, create invoice. Can you see this? Print details and create invoice. These are the two methods. Not only that, I can also get to know whether it's a method with if it's a public method or a private method, and what is the return data type, what are the parameters. I can invoke that method dynamically. I can create an object of the class dynamically. Of course, for the customer class, I won't be able to instantiate it. Why? Because it's an abstract class. You can see this, it is an abstract class. You got this, friends? So I can do this introspection. Now all of this, why I have done this is that so that you understand the concept here, right? That the class loader is loading the class, and loading of class means creating internally. It does create an object of class, and it loads the bytecode information. It stores the bytecode information in the object of class, and then once it has the bytecode, it has the definition of the class, and then it can create not one but thousands of objects as and when needed in during the execution of your application. That's how it is. Now one point I want you to make note of, I won't get into the discussions of it, otherwise we will end up getting into things which are beyond our scope. Okay, just hold on for a second. Yeah, I'm sorry. Correct. So yeah, so just make note of it, just scribble it somewhere, or maybe write it in the chat window. You will remember it. The class will never be reloaded by the same class loader. If you have a different custom class loader, the class will be reloaded again in the cache of that class loader. I will repeat. Of course, I won't be able to repeat because I don't buy hard things, right? So I will, when I repeat the second time, it will be with a different, maybe wordings, with different statement. So, I mean, statement remains, the semantic remains the same. Two different class loaders will end up loading the classes again, like, I mean, okay, let me put it like this. The same class loader will never ever reload the class again, but a different class loader will load that class again. So if I have two class loaders, each class loader has got its own cache of classes. Each class loader will have its own cache of classes. If there are 4 class loaders, each class loader will have its own cache. So if this class loader has loaded that class, that particular class, it will never reload it. But another class loader, yes, it will reload that class again if it has to use it. This class loader will reload the class again. Well, I won't say reload. Why? Because it is not reloading in itself twice. It's loading the class in this class loader. It will load the class in this class loader. It will load this class in this class loader. But the same class loader will never reload the class again. That's how it is. So each class loader maintains its own cache of classes. This is one statement that you can put, and let me put this statement for you in the chat window. The same, okay, the more technical statement would be each class loader will maintain its own cache of classes. Okay, not that it is an advanced topic or something, but it is beyond the scope. There are many other critical things that we need to discuss, hence I'm leaving this here, but then otherwise you must make note of this point, right? Okay, so this is how it is. Now I want you to spend some time writing this code. Take a look at this code. I will keep this code open for just next 30 seconds. Please do not haste in typing it out while I'm keeping it open. Just understand what I'm doing. I have just put the name of the class in substring, and I've used class.forName. Make sure that you you say throws class not found exception. Methods, I have given methods. I'm giving you something else. What you do is go to the customer class and create a method, create something here like private. Okay, I'll say private a string name of the customer, and then say private int ID of the customer. Do this private string name and private int ID. And in this introspection demo, the way I have introspected on methods, I want you to introspect on fields as well. Introspect on fields and print me the names of the fields. Okay, introspect. Okay, come on, do this. So you know what I want you all to do. All right, so come on friends, this is what you're doing. Get started. Tell me if you have any doubts. Come on, do this, and let me know once you have finished it. Okay, so see this. I'm explaining this again. What we are doing here is that we're just putting the name of the class in string format. So when it is in string format, like for example, let me explain this in another way. I misspell it. Suppose if I say customer 1, I am misspelling it. Okay, and suppose so this class is not there at all, customer class is not there at all. Now if I try to run this, you see it will result into a class not found exception. Why? Because that class does not exist, right? You can see this find class has failed. You can see this class, it has failed, it has failed. You can see this here. Why? Because this class does not exist at all. So what I'm going to do now is that I will just go back and I'll remove that one. Now this is the perfect name of the class. So the name of the class is not known to your Java program. I repeat, it is not known at the time of compilation. So it does not know whether it is going to, I mean, which class it is supposed to load. It will know the class to be loaded only over here. Don't worry about why would you ever do this. There are many reasons. There is a huge utilization of this, or rather the use case of this. You cannot imagine frameworks like Spring and Hibernate and all such frameworks without the concept of dynamically loading the class. All of these frameworks work on the concept of introspection and reflection. Why? Because it needs to load the class runtime. You just simply annotate the class and it does the job for you during runtime. So there are many use cases. Don't worry about those use cases. It's too early to talk about it. But then as of now, you only understand that we are not explicitly getting the, using the class. We are saying, and tell me one thing, if this is the string, then in that case, I could have got the value of this string from the database. I could have got the value of this string from the input console. I could have got the value of this field from a file, from a properties file or something. So I get the name of the class or whatever the name of the class is. I don't know compilation time. I get to know, my program gets to know about it only runtime. So you see this, it gets loaded here. How it gets loaded? So this is just the string format. Here this does not load the class, but this is what loads the class. Class.forName is used in order to dynamically, rather I would say explicitly, load the class. And when it loads the class, it does exactly the same thing that we talked about. It creates an object of class, it stores the bytecode information of that class, and then it will start making use of it. So we are loading the class, and now when I say we are loading the class through class.forName, internally it uses the class loader to load the class and create an object of class. What it returns back to us? The reference of exactly that object of class. And when I get the reference here, I can use that reference in order to introspect. What do you mean by introspecting? You see, you introspect on your own self, you introspect on the character of a person, you introspect on your own character. You say, oh, okay, these are the attributes that I have. These are the features that I have. This is where I need to improve or whatever. So here, there's no question of improvement with the classes, but then here you introspect. What are the methods? What are the fields? What is it that you have in the class? What are the annotations? Which functions are private? Which functions are public? And so on. All that can be obtained using reflections. But we are not going that deep. We just want to know what are the methods that are declared. And you see this, once I have the name of the class properly put over here, then in that case, you see, I get the name of the method. See, this is called introspection. I get the name of the methods of that class. I can also, if I create an object of that class, which I cannot because this is an abstract class, but then otherwise, if this was not an abstract class, I could have created an instance dynamically, and I could have invoked this method dynamically. Got that? I could have done something like this. You see, I'll say object O is equal to, then now again, there is a class called object in Java. Okay, I'll say c.new instance. You see this, and then I'll say c.invoke. Can you say this? Sorry, method.invoke. I'll say method. I'm just for the sake of writing, I'm writing a dot, and I'll say invoke. You can see I can invoke the method on which object? I'll say on the object O. What are the parameters? I'll say new class. It's an array of parameters, and you see this is how I do it. So I will have to surround this also a try catch block. See, everything compiles. In short, these are the two lines that I have written over here in order to create a new instance dynamically and invoke a method dynamically. All of this is used extensively by these frameworks that we are going to use as we proceed further, but then you don't need to worry about it. As of now, you need to understand the concept of class loading and the very fundamental and the basic thing about introspection, wherein you introspect and get the methods that are there in the class. You get now, and this is the assignment that I've given you. This is the kind of work that I've given you, the task that I've given you. You must get me the fields. How will you get the fields? You said get declared methods. Okay, I will still give you some few more minutes, and let me see who all of you all have finished doing it by now. Okay. Hope that helps, friends. Still, if you have any doubts, absolutely feel free. Okay, two users given, done. Okay, so I can see done. One, two, three. I can see only four people confirming that they have finished doing this. Come on, friends, you must do it, and I'm sure you will be able to do it. Come on. Right, friends, come on, let's get started. I hope you are all back. Please confirm. All are back. Please confirm. Okay, so now I'll share my screen once again, and I am assuming that you have completed this. Like, you do have my project. So all of you, please once again, please confirm to me. Again, in the chat window, I'm looking at the chat window. Please tell me whether you have completed. Very good, very good. So you have imported my project successfully, isn't it? And you can run the project. Very good, excellent, brilliant, very nice. That sounds good. That sounds really good. Very nice. Perfect. That's good. Okay, so now you see what you're going to do is that I will. Sorry. Okay. Acha, I lost that. Control W closes. That's bad. Okay, so I will have to close everything from here using the cross button. Okay, so you see introspect demo. How did you write this code? I mean, how have you written this code? I hope you'll have all written this code, but still, if not, then I will help you out, and those who have already written can cross check. So I'm going to go back to my IDE. This is the IDE on my machine, not on Cloud Lab, and I'm going to write my code, and I will push the code. You see this? I will do what? I will write fields. I'll say field rather. Okay, field, and it's again an array. It's an array is equal to, I'll say c dot get declared fields. This is how simple. Here I was getting get declared methods, and here I'm getting get declared fields. And once I have got that, I will once again run a for loop. I'll say field f in fields. This is how I will read it. Field f in fields. So it will iterate over it. It will loop through it. So the first field and the second field and the third field and so on. And then here I write system.out.println f dot get name. That's it. Get name. So it will get me the name of the field. Now let's see whether I get that. So first it will print the name of the methods, and then yes, you see ID and name. You remember in the customer class we did create ID and name. So here I am getting ID and name. Now I will push this code. What do you mean by pushing this code? So I will wait a minute, file, and then reload from disk. Okay, you see this now. I have the git option here, and you see this. I am going to go to my commit, and it shows that this is the file in which I have made changes. See, we are supposed to also discuss a bit of DevOps, if I'm not mistaken. Let me check. Yeah, I think we are supposed to include DevOps as well. They have not mentioned this here, but I will check it out, no problem. Okay, so you see this, we will revisit this Git and stuff and all. We will talk about it when we start talking about DevOps, if at all that is a part of this program, or maybe someone else will be doing that training for you. So I select this and then I say commit. Okay, I do have to put a message. I'll say added some additional code. What was that code? I'll say added field introspection, or I'll say added field get declared fields. I'll say z dot get declared field, whatever command you want to put, fields code. Okay, added this code. So I'll say commit now, and I'll say commit and push. So this goes to the server, the Bitbucket server. Right now, what I want you to do is you need to go back to your project that you have, my project in your IDE that you have imported. You will find Git option there as well. You can see this. Just go to Git option there. You see, but make sure that you have not made any changes. Here in commit, you must not get any file, because if you make changes, it will give you error saying that you have already made changes without committing those changes. How can you take the pull? So you just go to git and then, and you see select this master, and you see there is an icon out here, update selected. When you do that, you see, now see, there is no code here on my cloud lab, but the moment I say update, I will get the code, the latest code that I have pushed from my local machine. Here you go, you can see this. You see this? I get the code here. Similarly, you will also, when you say pull, pull in the sense, you just say update selected and you will be able to get the code. Confirm to me that you have got the latest code on your machine. Very simple stuff. Very good. Very good. Very good. Very nice. Very good. Nice. Very good, very good, very good, brilliant. Very good. And when you run the code, also do run the code. When you run the code here, it will of course give you the same results. It's the same class, same code. You see this, it gets executed. Yeah, here you see create invoice, print details, ID and name. So you can keep on copying the code from here, and then you can explore the code that I am writing. That will help you a lot. But you must practice a lot. Right? You must practice a lot. Whatever I ask you to do on your machines, you must be able to do it successfully. That's extremely important. Okay, so this was about introspection and stuff. Now we are going to come back to our classes that we were talking about. You remember the classes that we were talking about, right? We were talking about, you remember yesterday when we started in the evening when we started talking about inheritance, and I'm sorry. And in this class, you remember I said clients being dependent on abstraction and not on implementation, and not on the implementation, right? And then we will discuss about the factory pattern as well, and we will talk about patterns a lot more on the 4th day. But for now, you've got to understand how you work with abstract classes and what is the concept behind it. Now you see this, we have got sales app. This is a class by itself, and this class in turn is creating a reference of some class. You see this, it is creating a reference of some class. And what is the reference of that class? What it is creating a reference of which class? It is creating a reference of customer class. So customer here, okay, or I'll say the customer, I'll say a customer, okay, a customer here. You see this, a customer is a reference variable of what type? Customer. But when I am instantiating it, I am instantiating it of type export customer. How come this is possible? On the left hand side you have got a class, but here on the right hand side you are instantiating it to some other class. How and why? How come? The reason is, or why is this possible, and how this works is this: export customer is definitely inherited from customer. So it is like this, if I say living being is the superclass, and human being inherits from living being, then I can very well make a statement that any human being is also a living being. Yes, I can see that. Another example, I will say Maruti is a type of a car. That means it inherits from, so the superclass is car. You have got a Maruti car, you've got a Hyundai car. Both of them, they inherit from car. So I can very well have an instance, okay, of type Maruti car and assign it to the reference of car. Why? Because any instance of Maruti or Hyundai car is eventually also a car, right? So you can very well do this. An employee can be on contract, an employee can be on regular payroll. So if I am an instance of PwC, I am an employee of PwC, but I am on contract. So I am still, as to, though I am a contract employee, I am an employee. You can very well say employee emp is equal to new contract employee, because anyone who is a contract employee is an employee as well. And you can very well say employee emp is equal to new salaried employee, because a salaried employee is after all an employee. It makes sense. So this inheritance defines the hierarchy of classes. This inheritance defines the lineage. You see, lineage. What do you mean by lineage? See, I have accepted the fact that English is a foreign language for us. English is our foreign language. It is not our mother tongue. So it's absolutely fine to not know the literal meaning of some English word. In fact, what I do is that whenever I come across anything, and when I start learning anything new in technology, anything that I read, I first make sure that I understand the literal meaning of it. Because if I do not understand the literal meaning, it makes no sense to proceed further at all. It will be difficult for me to understand the concept, the technical concept behind it, isn't it? So when I say lineage, what does lineage mean? Right? A family, isn't it? Lineage. You can see direct descendant from an ancestor. You see this? A direct descendant from an ancestor. So that's what lineage is. So here I have defined the lineage, Here I have defined a class, customer class. This is the parent class. This is the parent class. Which is the descendant class? You have got customer as export customer and local customer as descendants of it. But here we don't call it, descendants and stuff. We call it parent class and the child class. So this is either you call it an inherited class, or you may call it a child class of this parent class customer. And that is the reason why I can very well say a customer is equal to an export customer, or I can also say local customer. It depends. Whatever instance I want to create, I can create. But the instance is of what type? Customer. Now you see this. Suppose this was a local class, this is a local customer. When I go to the local customer here, I remove this extends customer. So local customer now does not belong to the hierarchy of or to the lineage of customer class. I repeat, local customer does not belong to the lineage of customer class. If that's how it is, you see this gives me a compilation error. It says required type is customer, but you are providing local customer, which is not of type customer, isn't it? Which is not of type customer. You see, local customer now by definition is not of type customer, because it does not inherit from customer. So what I'm going to do now is, again I'll go back and I'll say extends, I'll say customer. Now no errors at all. Okay, it compiled successfully without any issues. So you've got to take this as a thumb rule. Whenever you create, you can very well declare a reference variable of type superclass, but instantiate the object of the subclass. Note my words. Instantiate the object of the subclass. You can very well do that. Why is this done? So that the client classes or the client functions are dependent on the abstraction, not on the implementation. See the fun here. I say public static, and then I say void. I'll say public static void public static void, and I'll say print code, or say print details, suppose. Okay, print, I'll say customer details, print customer details. This is what I'm writing here. Okay, and it takes a parameter of type customer. See this, it takes a parameter of type customer. Why? Because I do not want this function to be dependent. I repeat, I do not want this function to be dependent on hello. Okay, I'm so sorry. So you see public static void print customer details, and this is an abstract class. See, customer is an abstraction. You can see this. right? So the client function, this function is the client of customer. Why? Because it is this function that will be invoking the method. So I'll say customer dot, and I will say print details. Now, why am I passing the customer here and not the export customer or the local customer? Why? Because I do not want this print customer details to be dependent on the implementation class. I do not want this function to be even know, I mean, this function should not even know about the existence of export customer and local customer. It does not, it need not worry. Why? So that you can plug and play different implementations, you can plug and play different subclasses. So tomorrow if you have a third type of a customer, this function will still remain as it is. It is just that you will instantiate whichever is the appropriate type and pass it as a parameter. This function will not change. See, for example, now I'm going to actually practically do the thing, do things and show you what I'm going to do. I'm going to say print customer details, and I will pass a customer as a parameter. Please see this. This works. Now, even if I change this from local customer to export customer, it still works. This function will not give me any compilation error. Why? Because export customer or a local customer both are of type customer, and this is concerned with the customer, whatever the customer is, whether it's an export customer or it is a local customer, it does not matter to print customer details. Suppose if I don't do this and if I say local customer, then in that case, see, this fails. Then this will work only and only when I create an instance of local customer here. See, this works. Sorry, here also I will have to define this of type local customer. Now this works. But the moment I say instead of local customer, I wanted to work with export customer, you see this, I'll say export customer here and I'll say export customer here, this will fail. Why will this fail? See, there is a compilation error here. Why? Because this is expecting a local customer and you are passing a parameter as export customer. Try and understand this point very, very nicely. Try and understand this point very, very nicely. So your client class or your client function is being dependent on the actual implementation and not on the abstraction. This is bad. So you say that I'm going to come back and make changes here. Oh my God, this is all the more bad. If you make changes here, this compiles. But then tomorrow, if at all you wanted to work with the local customer and for the same functionality, you wanted to invoke the same functionality for the local customer, again, this will fail. This doesn't go in. Why? Because you are trying to pass a local customer, but you have said this is export customer. So the super class, which is an abstraction, is what is supposed to be given over here. Now it does not matter. See, it compiles successfully. Whether it's a local customer or it is an export customer, in both the cases, it works like a charm without any problems. See, take a look. So you can plug and play different implementations. Note my words. You can plug and play different implementations, and the best way of doing it is that the reference variable that is defined is better. It's better that you define the references of always super types. You define the references of a type. When I say type, I'm talking about a class or an interface. We will come to the interfaces later on, but I'm talking about an abstract class, and this abstract class is the super class. It's better that the variables are defined of super types, so that you can pass that as a parameter, and then you define functions also taking parameters of super types, so that you can now pass local customer or else you can pass export customer. See, everything works. So I can now very well make a statement that this print customer details, you see this, I am making a statement here, you see this, print customer details is neither dependent on local customer nor it is dependent on export customer. In fact, it is agnostic of the existence of local customer and export customer. It is completely agnostic, my dear friends. You see this? It is completely agnostic. You got this, friends? See, right? See this, it works, right? Correct, see. So this is exactly how it is. This is exactly how it is. And if you click here, you will be able to get it in a more beautiful format. I mean, I've just written Java doc here. So this is how it is, friends. So your client classes or your client functions must be dependent on abstraction and not on the implementation, so that you can plug and play different implementations. What do you mean by plug and play different implementations? I am plugging the implementation of export customer, works. I am plugging the implementation of local customer, it works, it works. Correct. So you see, you remember right on day one, yesterday I did make a statement that you must design your application. So you must write your application in such a way that it is resilient to changes. You must be able to enhance the capability of the software without modifying a lot of code in your application. Correct. So for maintainability purpose, you must engrave this in your mind that your client classes or your client functions must be dependent on abstraction, not on the implementation. This is $1,000,000 point, right? That's how it is. So that you can plug and play different implementations. I repeat, so that you can plug and play different implementations. Do you have any doubts, any questions? Let me check. If you have any doubts, any questions, absolutely feel free. Any questions, any doubts? Clear? Right, that's how it is. Exactly. Super, very good. So this is how it is. Now I want you to try your hands exactly on what I have written. Come on, friends, do this. It shouldn't take more than 2-3 minutes. It must not take more than 2-3 minutes. Come on. And I'm not going to share my screen now. You must be able to write all on your own, and after 2-3 minutes, after you shouldn't take more than 2-3 minutes. Understand? See what I have written here. See the code that I have written. Okay, don't worry about this commented code. Right, see this code, try and understand. Correct. Right, so come on, start writing this code. It's pretty simple, shouldn't take more than 2-3 minutes. I hope you all can all see my screen. Yeah, some of them rated themselves 3 to 5, 3 on 5 yesterday, right, Kaushal? I have done the course, but yeah, correct. Okay, so 3 was like, I expected that if you say 3, it means, I mean, you are completely hands-on and you have been writing some code and you are completely cool with Java. It's just that you do not know the other advanced part of it. But then anyways, no problem. 3 is kind of an average, so, but no problem, absolutely fine. This training, that's exactly what this training is for, right? So this is absolutely not, I'm not expecting that you all are all great with Java to start with. That's absolutely perfect, and this is exactly the reason why they have done this training. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to create a new package out here, and I'll say basics. Okay, I'll say basics, you see. So within this com.pwc.training.java, assignment was the first one, and then I'm saying basics. And now within this, I will start with classes, like plain classes. So I will create a class called customer here again, or maybe I have already created a class called customer, so I'll create a class called product, and I will add it to my to my VCS, so that whenever I commit, it gets committed automatically, right? Please see this. So public class product is what I have created. Now whenever you have a class, this is how you create the construct of the class. You start with product class product. What is a class? As I explained to you yesterday, class is the blueprint of how an object will look like. When an object is created of a class, how will it look like? It will look, what will be the properties of that object, and so what will be the state of that object, and what will be the behavior of that object. It is determined based on the properties of the class and the functions of the class. See the statements that I'm making, over here. So you see, I'm saying I'm defining some properties here. I'll say private. What do you mean by private? This particular property will be accessible only from within the class. I will not be able to use this property from out of this class. When I say private, when I say public, it will be accessible from out of the class, from anywhere in the entire application. And when I say protected, it will be accessible from within the class, from the inherited classes, and from any class within the same package, right? Within the same हाँ वो दे दो ना, ये वहीं रख दो प्लीज, शुक्रिया। आप शाम को जब टिफ़िन ले जाओगे ना तो वो सब भी साथ में ले जाना, और ये भी साथ में ले जाना शब्बीर भाई, ये भी ले जाना। शाम को जब ले जाओगे ना तो आराम से 5 साढ़े 5 बजे आना। हाँ आज हाँ हाँ इंशाल्लाह, ठीक है, थैंक यू। नहीं कोई मुझे समझा कि किसी ने खोल के आके वापस गया है, मुझे नहीं पता था आप आकर गए हो, लेकिन मुझे समझ में आया कि कोई आ गया। नहीं परफेक्ट, ठीक है, thank you. Acha, so you have got product class, right? So when you define at the class level, when you define the properties, these are the instance variables. This becomes the instance variable. Now try and understand this point. When I say instance variable, what does that mean? I say, for example, private int id. So there will be an identification for the product. I say private string name. So whatever product you create, it will have a name as well. Private, and I'll say int price. So there will be a price of that product, isn't it? There will be a price of the product. So I've got int id, string name, and int price. Now all of these are private variables, and I better call them as instance variables, friends. See what am I, see the term that I'm using. All of these are instance variables, or else you may also call them as object variables. I repeat, you may call them as instance variables or object variables. Now what does this mean? This means that, like for example, I can also create yet another class called employee. I'm sure you can relate to this. You are an employee of your company, so you will definitely have an identification number. So you say private int id, then you will have a name for sure. In fact, you will have first name, and then you will have, of course, subtype string, and then you have private, string, and I'll say last name, and then you definitely would have address private, so in your payroll system, in your company, there is a record created for you, and they would have definitely stored the address as well, right? Isn't it? So these are your these are the properties of an employee class. This is a class. These are the properties that you have defined in the employee class. Correct? Now whenever you create an object of this class, each and every object, don't you think so? Okay, now let me see the names here. Gaurav, I can say very well, is an object of class employee with respect to PwC payroll. With respect to PwC payroll, Gaurav is an object of class employee. Abhijit is an object of class employee. Bala is an object of class employee. Chandana is an object of class employee with respect to PwC payroll. Correct? You all are all classes. You all are all objects of class employee. So don't you think each one of you all will have its own ID, its own name, its own his or her own address? So this is how in memory it will look like. You see this? We have already talked about it, but then still, in more detail, I will say classes and objects. Furthermore, classes and objects. So we know where are the objects created, friends. Can you help me to recollect once again? Come on, we have talked a lot about it. Tell me. Where are objects created? So if this is your Java heap, this is exactly where the objects are created. Java heap, isn't it? This is where the objects are created, in Java heap. Correct? Right? This is your Java heap. And then the objects are created here. So you have threads, correct? You have threads, and so on. And whenever from any thread you create an object, what happens is that it creates an object over here. So if suppose employee is a class, and if you create an object of that class employee, so if you have 3 objects of class employee, all the 3 objects are objects of class employee, suppose, right? So it's an employee object of class what? Employee. Okay, let me do this. Instead of using this shape, because it becomes difficult for me to put things then within that. So this is one object of class employee, right? This is one object of class employee. Oops. So this is one object of class employee, and then there can be several objects of class employee created in memory. There can be 3, there can be 30, there can be 300, there can be 3000, right? So these are all the objects of class employee. All of these objects are of class employee, but each one of these employee objects will have its own what? ID. Correct? It will have its own ID, and then it will have its own, each and every object will have its own name. Correct? And then each and every object will have its own address, isn't it? Okay, first name and last name are the two properties that I created, but then here I'm just using name. It's okay, in order to save myself from the efforts of defining many variables here, draw them, so this becomes easier for me, so okay. Oops. Right, so see this here, name, correct? So similarly, ID, name and address, correct? All of these three will be there for the other object as well. It will be there for the other object as well, isn't it? Similarly, I will have all the three. This is bad. Right, it will be there for the other object as well, and then again I duplicate it and it will be there for the other object as well. So this is how, if you have 4 objects of class employee, this is how it will look like. So this ID out here will have its own value, is equal to, for example, 101. This is the value of ID of this object. Similarly, you have name is equal to, suppose you say Gaurav, right? This is the value of name for this object, correct? Okay, like this, okay, correct, like this. And address, again similarly, so ID, this will have its own ID, another object will have its own ID here, like this, isn't it? And then you have ID is equal to, I'll say 103 perhaps. So this has got its own value. So each and every object will have its own, variables, 104 and so on. This is exactly why I call them as, that's the general term in the industry, these are known as instance variables. This is one instance of class employee. This is another instance, this entire thing. This is another instance of class employee. This is yet another instance of class employee. So how many instances do you see here of class employee? 1. I have second instance of class employee, I have the third instance of class employee, and I have the fourth instance of class employee. I may call it instance, or I may call it an object of class employee, one and the same thing. One and the same. There is a subtle difference, forget about that. Don't get into the details of that. I mean, it's absolutely just, for the sake of argument and Stack Overflow, forget about that. But otherwise, people use it interchangeably. I may call it an object of a class, I may call it an instance of a class. I repeat, either an instance of a class or an object of a class. So I have, how many objects do you see here? There are 4 objects of class employee here. Correct? That's how it is. Very simple stuff. And each and every object will have its own copy of variables. ID, name and address is specific to this object. ID, name and address is specific to this another object. This ID, name and address is specific to yet another third object, and similarly here. Now you want to make changes to the ID of, say, for example, the third object. Then in that case, whatever is the name of the object dot ID is equal to whatever the value is. Isn't it? That's exactly how it is. So this is called, what you see in front of you is called the state of an object. So if someone asks you, what is the state of employee object? This employee object, this particular employee object. Okay, so let me do this. I'll say this is employee 1. Okay, no, well, I'm naming the class over here, so let that be as it is. All are of objects of class employee, but this is object 1, object 2, object 3 and object 4. So object 1, if you ask me what is the state of object 1, I will say ID is equal to 101, name is equal to Gaurav, address is equal to Pune. That becomes the state of that object. If you ask me what is the state of this object, I will say ID is equal to 103, name is equal to Ananya, and address is equal to, say, for example, Bangalore. So that is the state of that object. Correct. And if you ask me, suppose this, what is the state of this object, I will say ID is equal to 104, name is equal to Shakir, address is equal to Baroda. That's what the name of the object, I mean, that's what the state of the object is. State of the object, state of the object, state of the object. So what is the state of the object? All the properties and the values of those properties put together, runtime in memory, is the state of the object. That's what the state of the object is. Isn't it? That's exactly how it is. So you see, we have defined ID, first name and last name. Let me make this simple. I'll just say name out here instead of last name, first name and last name. We have got three things: ID, name and address. You got that? So can I say that the properties of the class defines the state of the class? Yes or no? Come on, I want answers. Can I make a statement that the properties of the class defines the state of an object? Properties in the class, state of an object. Properties in the class, state of an object. Correct? Brilliant. And then if I say, for example, print employee details. If suppose this is the function that I write over here, and I say, of course, public void. And if this is what I write over here, this is the function. In the class, this is the function. But with respect to the object, I'll say this is the behavior that can be invoked on each object of class employee. Note my words. I can say this is the behavior that can be invoked on each and every object. Behavior is the action which is dynamic, which is runtime. It is always invoked on the object behavior. Yes, you have got class-based methods also. You have got class-based functions. We will come to that later. But then otherwise, object behaves based on the functionality that you have defined over here. And what is the functionality? You say S out. And I'll say ID is, see what I'm doing here, ID colon, and I'll say this dot ID. This refers to the current object on which the print employee details will be invoked. This is the reference. It's a special keyword. This is the reference variable to the object of the employee class on which you will execute this function. So I say this dot ID, and I say plus, and I say name colon. I'll write this dot name, okay, and then plus, and you see this, I'll write address, and I'll write this dot address. Correct? That's how it is, isn't it? So these are, this is how it is. Now I will create a new class, and I will give the name of the class as employee app. And in this employee app, I will write the main function. I will write main function in the employee app. See this. And what will I do? I will create employee emp is equal to new employee. Correct? So I'll say emp1. I wanted to create 4 objects, isn't it? How many objects do I want to create? I want to create 4 objects. So I go back here and emp1. So this is the first object, and I say emp1 dot id is equal to 101, and it will give me compilation error. You see this? This is read out here. Why? Because you see this, it very clearly tells me, see this, ID has private access. It says ID has private access. How can you assign a value to it? It cannot be accessed from out of the class. See for yourself, it's giving me an error. See, there is a red line here. And when I move my mouse pointer over it, it says ID has private access. In employee class, you cannot access it from here. So instead of making it public, it's better to keep the private variables as instance variables as private. Why? Because you may have some functionality, some specific logic while setting the values, and you do not want the value to be exposed directly to the other classes from out of this class. So what you do is that you define some methods here. What those methods are? You say, for example, public void, I'll say set ID. Now see the naming convention here. I repeat, see the naming convention. I repeat once again, see the naming convention here. The naming convention is that you will use set to set the value, followed by exactly the name of the variable, but the name of the variable, the first character will be in uppercase in the setter method. This is called setter method. What is this known as, friends? Setter method. Okay, and then you can have setter method for name, address, and ID, or for all, or for just one or two. You have to decide. The name of the variables must always start with lowercase. Some important points here. The name of class, do not please violate these principles at all. The name of the class must be in up must start with uppercase. Okay, the name of class must be nouns. Okay, they must not be verbs. Got it? The name of variables and methods must always start with lowercase unless the variable is a final. See, variable and final are two contradictory statements. If it's final, it's not a variable, you cannot change the value of it. But then if it's a final, you can have all upper cases. Then the name of the right, correct. The methods must always be verbs, never nouns. They must always be verbs. You see, print employee details. I'm saying print, that's the verb. Don't give the name of the method as printing. No, bad, pathetic, preposterous. Never do this. Right? You say print. Okay, and what do you want to print? Be more elaborate. You say print employee details. Right? Something like this. So I have a setter method here and I want to set the value of ID. So I will take the value as a parameter ID and I'll say this dot ID is equal to ID. Take a look. I will say this dot ID is equal to ID. You got the point, friends? You got that? Right? So I have created a setter method. Through the setter method, this dot ID will be changed to whatever value is passed as a parameter. Now I go back over here. So instead of saying emp1 dot ID, because that is still private, I'll say set ID to 101. And once I have set the value, you see this, what is this? This dot ID is equal to ID. Now this will be the reference to the object on which this method is called. See my plain simple English. See this. This will be the reference to the object on which this method is called. So you see this. I am calling this method. I said this will be the reference to the object on which this method is called. So this set ID is the method that is called. On which object? emp1. So tell me one word answer. This will refer to which object? This will refer to which object? Yes, Likita, you're right. It is encapsulation. Employee object, emp1, perfect, very good. So coming back over here, employee app, so emp1 set ID 101, so 101 will be the value of the first object, emp1, right? Coming back over here, now I'll say emp1 dot, I'll say print details, print employee details. Now in print employee details, what am I printing? This dot ID. This dot ID. So this will again be the reference to what? The emp1 object, because it is emp1 object on which I'm invoking this. So it will pick up the value of ID of emp1 exactly. And now when I run this, friends, please see, it will give me, of course, for name, I have not set the value of name, and hence it will give me the value of name and address as null. You can see this name is null, address is null, but ID is 101. You got that? Simple, as simple as this. Now what I'm going to do, I am pushing this code. You must pull this code, take a look at this code, copy paste this code in your own project. Now you know very well how to switch from your project, between your project and my project. Can you see this? Right? This is how you switch. This is how you switch. But don't write any code in my project. Otherwise you will not be able to take pulls later. See this. So you switch to, you take a look at the code from my project and you copy it from here, whatever you want to copy, like for example, right mouse button and you say copy out here, copy option is available. And then you go to your project here, Java trainings, and then you create a class, or else you can copy the entire class itself. For example, see this, I can copy this entire assignment. I'll say copy. This is the entire folder that I'm copying. I'll go to window, I'll go to Java trainings, I'll click right mouse button here and I'll say paste, and you see I'll say okay. It will copy the entire assignment folder here. See, everything is here. So you can take it in your project. You can very well copy it in your project, right? And so the exercise and the task that I'm giving you to do is this. First, let me push the code. Okay. Classes and objects. Okay, I'll commit. I'll push. So you will get all of this code that I have just written. Okay, and then you see this, I go to my PWC Java and I will take the pull. I will update my project. Correct? And then when I do that, you see I get basics and I got the employee app, and here you are. Now what I want you to do is, the way I have created the setter method for ID, I want you to go to the employee class and create the setter method for name and address as well. Come back to employee app and then you set the values for name and address both, and let it print m1 print details. And similarly, so you do this for the employee object m1, and similarly you create m2, m3 and m4. So I want you to create 3 additional objects of employee and set the appropriate values of ID, name and address, and print the details of all the 4 objects. m1.print employee details, m2.print employee details, m3.print employee details, and m4.print employee details. That's what I want you to do. Come on friends, get started. What's the time now? It's 12:43. Okay, I will put this over here. Create setters for name and address in the employee class. Use those setter methods to set the value of name and address of emp1, and then create 3 more objects, emp2, emp3, emp4, and use all setters to set the values of id, name, address, and use print employee details on each one of these objects to print their respective state. See, I'm using the term state here. Come on, let's do this. I am copying and pasting it here as well. Okay. Okay, good. So see, I have copied and pasted in the chat window all that you are supposed to do, and I will stop sharing because anyways you do have your code. I have already pushed the code. You can take the pull and you can very well see the code. Correct? Okay, so hope you can see my screen now. And you see this, so set id, this dot set id, and similarly we created setter method set name as well. And then you see, you know what, these IDs are pretty smart. These IDs are smart. What you can do is that you can just simply click right mouse button and you can see there is an option here called generate. When you click on generate here, you see there is an option called setter getters. So if suppose I just don't want to create getters, just the setters, I will click on setter, and then you see this, I can select this address. Why is it giving me address? Because it automatically detects that ID and name has already been with the setter methods for ID and name are already there, so it gives me address, and I click on OK. You see this, it automatically creates that setter method here. But you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to cut that and paste it over here so that it is towards the end of it. I don't want to, sorry. And then here you see towards the end of it, so you see I've got all my variables here. All my variables are here, and then you see all my setter methods are here. Then I go back to my employee app, and then here I'll say emp1. Before I print, I'll say emp1 dot, I'll say set name, and I'll say Shakir is the name, and then I'll say emp1 dot, I'll say set address, and I'll say Baroda is the address, and so on, isn't it? Similarly, I will create answer, and I'll say emp1 dot print details. Similarly, I'll say employee, I'll say employee, I'll write emp2 is equal to new employee. That's what I'm going to do. And then I'll say m2 dot, I'll say set ID, and in brackets and double quotes I will say, for example, I will say Shazia, right? That's the name. And then I say, oh sorry, it's an int, so see this is giving me an error, so I'll say 102, and I'll say emp2 dot, I'll say set name, and you can see this, I can give Shazia as the name, and then m2 dot, I'll say set address, and then I say Baroda. You see this here, correct? So this is how. And then when I say m2 dot print employee details, needless to say that it will print the employee details of, it will print the state of employee 2. Take a look. Take a look. So it prints the state of the first object, then it prints the state of the second object. As simple as this, and you can go on creating however number of objects or whatever the number of objects that you want. Right now I'm going to push the code. Those who have not finished for some reason, please make sure that you copy paste and you make the things run on your machine and you understand. If you have any questions, absolutely feel free to ask those questions. Take the poll and make sure that it is in line with my expectations. Okay, please. I will give you 2 minutes for this as well. We will be using constructors. So what are we doing now? We are initializing the state, right? This is exactly what we are doing. Correct? So you see this, we have got this class employee app, and here we are creating an object of a class, and we are initializing the state using the setter methods, and then we are creating an object of another class and initializing the state of the object of the second object. This is one way of doing it, but then many a times it happens that you create an object and you want to set maybe partially or maybe the entire state of an object or maybe partial state of an object. You want to initialize it through the constructor itself. So the moment the object is created, you want to initialize the state of it, and that's exactly where the constructor comes into play. So what we are now talking about is a constructor. So I'll go to my employee class, and in this employee class I will create a constructor. I can create multiple constructors, multiple overloaded constructors. So one is the constructor that I have which takes no parameters. This is the default constructor. And then the other constructor that I have is this, which takes 2 parameters. You see this? I will take like for example int id, and then I will say string name, and then I will say string address. You can see this, correct? And here itself I can see now this dot id is equal to id. Okay, and I better make this constructor as public. If I don't make this as public, it will not be accessible from out of the package. It will still be accessible from within the package, but not out of the package. So I'll say this dot, I'll say name is equal to name, and I'll say this dot address is equal to address. Correct? Please see this. You got that? Right? So I have created 2 constructors. This is called overloading of constructor. One is the constructor that is the default constructor which does not take any arguments, whereas there is another constructor which takes some parameters here. I mean, you have to decide based on your logic. You want just one parameter or multiple parameters, and you want to initialize the state of an object, whether partially or fully. So this is fully, like I mean, there are 3 variables out here, 3 instance variables, and we are initializing the state of the object, complete state of an object with the 3 parameters here, and we are saying this dot id, this dot name, this dot address is equal to those parameters respectively. Correct? Now I go back to employee app. I will keep exactly all of these things as it is, but now the third employee that I create, I'll say employee emp 3 is equal to new employee, and you see I have got two constructors now. I can either use this constructor, which is okay, otherwise I can also use a constructor which takes three parameters. I'll say 103 and I'll say in double quotes and I'll say Murli and in comma, and I'll say the address is Chennai. You see this? So I have this third object created with the help of a constructor. What is a constructor? Constructor helps you to create an object. This is also a constructor. Earlier we did not create any default constructor. So even if you do not create a default constructor, that constructor will always be there. But the moment you define any constructor, then the ones that you have defined will only be there in the class. Then there is no default constructor unless you explicitly define it. What I mean to say is that if I remove this now, you see this will not work. This will not work. Correct? What does this mean? If you define a constructor which is non-default constructor, then you have to decide whether you really want a default constructor or not, because by default it will not create a default constructor for you. But in the earlier case, when I didn't do this and when I didn't do this, correct, then there was no need for me to explicitly define a default constructor, though I could have defined then also. But there is no need, because if you don't define any constructor, it will by default end up internally defining a default constructor. But the moment you define some constructor other than the default one, then it's mandatory. Then you must define a default constructor here, or else the default constructor will not work. And that's okay. Maybe in some cases you do not want a default constructor. It's quite possible. I repeat, in some cases you may not really want a default constructor, and you may always want the instantiation of the class. Creating an object of that class must happen through this constructor, or maybe whatever constructor you define, you want that specific constructor to be used always. That's also absolutely okay. It depends. There are so many classes in Java which does not have a default constructor, which is absolutely fine. So you see here, coming back to the point, I created this, and now what am I going to do? I'll just simply say m3.print employee details. Sorry. And you see this now, when I run this code, it prints for me the employee details of the third. Here you go, Murli, address is Chennai 103. So please, I want you to now use and create a constructor like this, and I want you to not just simply create a constructor, but use that constructor to create an object. In your case, it will be employee 5, because you have already created 4 employees. In your case, it will be employee 5, and create an object like this and print the details. Come on friends, get started. Very good, very nice. So a couple of you all have already finished doing this.